since the cannonballs wouldn't work, and used dynamite to destroy the wall of the house. And finally, he had to come running out.
Wild West History Association. Well, we're on another adventure. We're going out to see if we can find the grave of Outlaw Ned Christie, who was, I'm not going to tell you the rest of it right now. You're going to have to listen to it, but we're going to try to find his grave and possibly the site where he was murdered.
So Ned Christie was a famous historical outlaw / folk hero, depending upon your point of view. Ned Christie was a Cherokee Indian, a prominent political leader in eastern Oklahoma, who later became an outlaw. And there's a dispute among historians as to whether he had murdered several men. He was accused of murdering 5 men, including approximately 5 men, including a deputy United States Marshal named Dan Maples in 1887. And Christie historically has been considered guilty of at least the Maples murder. More modern research does raise some questions as to whether he did the murder. It's still kind of an open question. But in that era, it was illegal to sell liquor to Native Americans, and there were federal laws. At this point, eastern Oklahoma in the 1880s was part of the Indian Territory, later became part of the state of Oklahoma. And Ned Christie, according to the charges against him, when Dan Maples and some other federal marshals who had legal authority over white people in the Indian Territory, the Native American police, the Indian police, had jurisdiction over Native Americans. So Native Americans were subject to Indian law, white people were subject to white man's law. And so the deputy marshals had come out near Tahlequah to make an arrest of several what they call rum runners or liquor dealers who were smuggling liquor into the nations, into the Indian nations. And they were ambushed, and Maples was killed. And numerous accounts said that Ned Christie had done it. One of the suspects who was arrested said that Ned Christie had done it. Many years later, in 1918, another account came forward from another fellow who said Ned Christie didn't do it. Generally speaking, you go with the contemporary accounts, the ones that are rendered at the time of the incident or near the incident, because those are typically more accurate. Later, as stories develop and people's memories fade, other stories come out. So it is kind of an open question as to whether Ned Christie had done this murder or not. And I'll hang it up to Alan or whoever wants to talk. I don't want to hog it.
Okay, I got a question. Now, Peden Tolbert was a deputy U.S. Marshal, and from what I understand, that they actually found Christie in his home, which was somewhat of a fortification. There was also rumored he had built a fort. Now we're going to see if we can find out more about that. But anyway, and they, from what I can find out, they had a cannon with them that was what actually killed Ned Christie. Do you know anything about that?
Warrants were issued for Ned Christie, charging him with murder. And in addition to being a political leader, he was a gunsmith and a blacksmith. There's must be 4 or 5 photographs of him. He was very proud of his Cherokee heritage and was a political leader among the Cherokee. And what happened was there were a number of efforts made to capture him by different posses. In one incident in about 1889, a large posse led by Heck Thomas. Heck Thomas became famous as one of the 3 guardsmen of Oklahoma Territory, who's a famous lawman, Deputy United States Marshal, manhunter, gunfighter. And there's a huge gunfight at Ned Christie's cabin. And finally, Heck Thomas and his men set the cabin on fire to try to drive Ned Christie out. And at the end of the day, Christie managed to escape. And his adherents and other members of the Cherokee community harbored him and hid him out and kept him safe. And so finally, a posse of deputy marshals came to his cabin, which I understand had been pretty heavily fortified. There's kind of a dispute in the sources as to whether this incident that I'm about to talk about happened at his cabin or at a log fort that he'd built on a hill above the cabin. Either way, the officers knew that he was holed up in a fortified position made of logs. So they borrowed a military cannon from the U.S. Army, and they came out to the cabin and they laid siege to it. And Ned Christie was there with a young Indian boy, a teenage boy, and there was a huge gun battle. And they pretty much blew the cabin partly apart, I think. And I don't think the cannon was as successful as they thought it would be. And finally they shot and killed Ned Christie. And he was taken back to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and there's a famous photograph of Christie propped up on a board, dead, holding his Winchester rifle in his arms, with the posse standing around him on the front. I believe it's on the front veranda of the federal courthouse in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And that was the end of Ned Christie. At least the historic Ned Christie. There's a legendary folklore Ned Christie as well, who remains very well known in the annals of Western history.
Well, we're coming into, we're about 7 miles from Stillwell, Oklahoma. And then we're going to turn west to go out to where we think he's buried. We got some coordinates, and so we'll get back with you in a few minutes. Okay, I think we're close. It says we got to turn in 300. Oh, we're here. Feet to, there's a cemetery right over there. So turn right here, and then turn. There's an old store right here. Turn to go right in here. There you go.
Arriving at coordinates
and
on the left.
Ned Christie's grave back in here. Just park under the shade tree up there. Yeah, here we go. Al, you got on your
I got my
safari hat on.
You dropped yours.
Oh, I thought I had it on my head.
No, you got two.
Got another hat on my head. Okay, let's see if we can find old Ned. Boy, if this is his, it's broken right here.
Oh, well, there's a Christie.
A bunch of Christies in here. Let's see. This is him, Ned Christie.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, we looked out real. This hadn't been a really hard one to find at all, like I thought it was going to be. Being out here in the middle of the Cherokee Nation. There was Ned. Who is this? Annie Wolf. Elbert Dick. I guess all these are. White Christie, it's right there. Wadana Christie. I'm saying that wrong. She's Cherokee. And here's another Christie. Okay, this is great. A nice cemetery too. Somebody's keeping it up. Rather than letting it just get overgrown. Got a small fence around it, and well, this is great. So we're gonna go now and see if we can't find out where his house is. Well, that was really good. We met with a gentleman here that I think his wife is Cherokee. She came out and talked to us, and John was carrying on a big conversation with her, and she says, "Come on in." So our chauffeur here. Anyway, so we are going to now go down the dirt road, turn right on a paved road, then turn left on a gravel road. We're going to Ned Christie Springs, they call it, in his house. According to local lore or documents, whatever you want to call it, it should be somewhere right in that area.
And we're driving on Christie Road.
Yeah, and we're driving on Christie Road right now, so must have something to do with it.
The final assault on his house is one of the most controversial things. And the first question is, how many people were involved in this? And for certain, there were at least 23 people involved. And that's been ascertained by counting the number of people in the pictures that show where he was captured, or not captured, but killed. As I said before, the only way that they could get him was with this cannon. And finally, he'd been surrounded, and they tried to use the cannon, and they fired the cannon at this double-logged house, fort that he'd built. And even though the cannon balls were projectiles, they were like bullets, and fired at it, they bounced off the side of the house. Fortunately, they'd also brought dynamite. So, since the cannonballs wouldn't work, they saw that there was a wagon in front of his house that was broken, and they managed to make a shield with the wagon. They pushed it up to the house and used dynamite to destroy the wall of the house. And finally, he had to come running out. And finally, they managed to shoot him and kill him.